Wall Street is an 8-block-long street in the financial district of Lower Manhattan in New York City. It runs between Broadway in the west to South Street and the East River in the east. The term Wall Street has become a metonym for the financial markets of the United States as a whole, the American financial services industry, New York-based financial interests, or the financial district itself. Anchored by Wall Street, New York has been described as the world's principal financial center. Wall Street was originally known in Dutch as de Walstraat when it was part of New Amsterdam in the 17th century, though the origins of the name vary. An actual wall existed on the street from 1685 to 1699. During the 17th century, Wall Street was a slave trading marketplace and a securities trading site, and from the early 18th century, 1703, the location of Federal Hall, New York's first city hall. In the early 19th century, both residences and businesses occupied the area, but increasingly business predominated, and New York City's financial industry became centered on Wall Street. In the 20th century, several early skyscrapers were built on Wall Street, including 40 Wall Street, once the world's tallest building. The Wall Street area is home to the New York Stock Exchange, the world's largest stock exchange by total market capitalization, as well as the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and many commercial banks and insurance companies. Several other stock and commodity exchanges have also been located in downtown Manhattan near Wall Street, including the New York Mercantile Exchange and other commodity futures exchanges, and the American Stock Exchange. To support the business they did on the exchanges, many brokerage firms had offices nearby. However, the direct economic impacts of Wall Street activities extend worldwide. Wall Street itself is a narrow winding street running from the East River to Broadway and lined with skyscrapers, as well as the New York Stock Exchange Building and Federal Hall National Memorial and One Wall Street at its western end. The street is nearby multiple subway lines and ferry terminals and both the World Trade Center, 1973 to 2001, site and the New World Trade Center. There are varying accounts about how the Dutch named de Walstraat, literally, Walloon Street, got its name. Two conflicting explanations can be considered. One explanation maintains that Wall Street was named after Walloons, the Dutch name for a Walloon being Wal. Among the first settlers that embarked on the ship Nieuw Nederland in 1624 were 30 Walloon families. In 1626, Peter Minuit, the governor of the colony, who became famous by the purchase of Manhattan Island for the Dutch West India Company, was a Walloon. Another explanation is that the name of the street was derived from a wall or rampart, actually a wooden palisade, on the northern boundary of the New Amsterdam settlement, built to protect against potential incursions from Native Americans, pirates, and the English. The wall was built of dirt and 15-foot, 4.6 m, wooden planks, measuring 2,340 feet, 710 meters, long and 9 feet, 2.7 meters, tall. While the Dutch word, wal, can be translated as rampart, it only appeared as de Walstraat on some English maps of New Amsterdam, whereas other English maps show the name as de Walstraat according to one version of the story. The Red people from Manhattan Island crossed to the mainland, where a treaty was made with the Dutch, and the place was therefore called the Pipe of Peace, in their language, Hoboken. But soon after that, the Dutch governor, Kieft, sent his men out there one night and massacred the entire population. Few of them escaped, but they spread the story of what had been done, and this did much to antagonize all the remaining tribes against all the white settlers. Shortly after, New Amsterdam erected a double palisade for defense against its now enraged red neighbors, and this remained for some time the northern limit of the Dutch city. The space between the former walls is now called Wall Street, and its spirit is still that of a bulwark against the people. In the 1640s, basic picket and plank fences denoted plots and residences in the colony. Later, on behalf of the Dutch West India Company, Peter Stuyvesant, using both enslaved Africans and white colonists, collaborated with the city government in the construction of a more substantial fortification, a strengthened 12-foot, 4 m, wall. In 1685, surveyors laid out Wall Street along the lines of the original stockade. The wall started at Pearl Street, which was the shoreline at that time, crossing the Indian Path Broadway and ending at the other shoreline, today's Trinity Place, where it took a turn south and ran along the shore until it ended at the Old Fort. In these early days, local merchants and traders would gather at disparate spots to buy and sell shares and bonds, and over time divided themselves into two classes, auctioneers and dealers. Wall Street was also the marketplace where owners could hire out their slaves by the day or week. The rampart was removed in 1699 and a new city hall built at Wall and Nassau in 1700. Slavery was introduced to Manhattan in 1626, but it was not until December 13, 1711, that the New York City Common Council made Wall Street the city's first official slave market for the sale and rental of enslaved Africans and Indians. The slave market operated from 1711 to 1762 at the corner of Wall and Pearl Streets. It was a wooden structure with a roof and open sides, although walls may have been added over the years and could hold approximately 50 men. The city directly benefited from the sale of slaves by implementing taxes on every person who was bought and sold there. In the late 18th century, there was a buttonwood tree at the foot of Wall Street under which traders and speculators would gather to trade securities. The benefit was being in proximity to each other. In 1792, traders formalized their association with the Buttonwood Agreement, which was the origin of the New York Stock Exchange. The idea of the agreement was to make the market more structured and, without the manipulative auctions, with a commission structure. Persons signing the agreement agreed to charge each other a standard commission rate. Persons not signing could still participate but would be charged a higher commission for dealing. In 1789, Wall Street was the scene of the United States' first presidential inauguration when George Washington took the oath of office on the balcony of Federal Hall on April 30, 1789. This was also the location of the passing of the Bill of Rights. Alexander Hamilton, who was the first Treasury Secretary and architect of the early United States financial system, is buried in the cemetery of Trinity Church, as is Robert Fulton, famed for his steamboats. In the first few decades, both residences and businesses occupied the area, but increasingly business predominated. There are old stories of people's houses being surrounded by the clamor of business and trade and the owners complaining that they can't get anything done, according to a historian named Burroughs. The opening of the Erie Canal in the early 19th century meant a huge boom in business for New York City, since it was the only major eastern seaport which had direct access by inland waterways to ports on the Great Lakes. Wall Street became the money capital of America. In the 1840s and 1850s, most residents moved further uptown to Midtown Manhattan because of the increased business use at the lower tip of the island. After October 7, 1896, it began publishing Dow's expanded list of stocks. A century later, there were 30 stocks in the average. Early 20th century. Business writer John Brooks in his book Once in Golconda considered the start of the 20th century period to have been Wall Street's heyday. The address of 23 Wall Street, the headquarters of J.P. Morgan & Company, known as the Corner, was the precise center, geographical as well as metaphorical, of financial America and even of the financial world. Wall Street has had changing relationships with government authorities. In 1913, for example, when authorities proposed a $4 stock transfer tax, stock clerks protested. At other times, city and state officials have taken steps through tax incentives to encourage financial firms to continue to do business in the city. September 1929 was the peak of the stock market. October 3, 1929 was when the market started to slip, and it continued throughout the week of October 14. In October 1929, renowned Yale economist Irving Fisher reassured worried investors that their money was safe on Wall Street. A few days later, on October 24, stock values plummeted. The stock market crash of 1929 ushered in the Great Depression, in which a quarter of working people were unemployed, with soup kitchens, mass foreclosures of farms, and falling prices. During this era, development of the financial district stagnated, and Wall Street paid a heavy price, and